Well, when I was about 8 years old, I was sent off to Bible camp. I was having a difficult time at Bible camp. My arts and crafts weren't as good as the other kids. My swimming abilities were not winning any awards. And by Thursday night of that week, I found myself very, very sad. In fact, I remember being up on the upper bunk and actually crying myself to sleep that night. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know why I was so disturbed. But when I got home, my mom told me that was homesickness. That was something like loneliness. Well, I didn't think much of it. But a few months later, I overheard her on the telephone talking to someone else's mom, telling that person who was in my class, their mother, that I had a problem with homesickness. And I reacted very violently and was very angry and very insulted that she would tell anybody that I had a maladjustment issue. That there was something, I felt embarrassed about that I didn't fit in. You see, one of the characteristics of loneliness is that we feel that we don't fit. We feel like we don't fit in. So fast forward 30-some years. I've been single a long time, haven't had a date in at least a year. And I'm on the pediatric ward. It's rare that I was up there. And across this patient, here comes a pediatrician, and our eyes meet. Well, it took me a while to figure out she didn't have a ring, and I had suddenly an incredible interest in pediatric patients. I was up there every chance I got, asking a lot of questions about their healthcare needs. Well, I asked her out on a date, and it turned out she lived not too far away. And so for the first time in a year, I had someone to run with, someone to walk with, someone to have dinner with. It was just like water on a desert. It was so beautiful. About the 3-4 week mark, I sensed that something was wrong. I was hoping that she would develop some spiritual interests, and she really didn't have any. Well, she had some, but it wasn't moving in the same direction that I was moving. And so I came to this sort of tension in my life, what to do about this relationship. And as I prayed about this, I really felt like God was saying, look, it's time to let her go. I was upset, I was angry, and I was lonely. I finally had someone to have meals with, to enjoy, but I was intensely lonely and very angry with God, and so I bought 6 half-gallons of ice cream. Actually, I had to make room in my freezer. You know how you have to adjust things just to get all that ice cream in, and I ate ice cream morning, noon, and night. You know, that's what we do when we have pain. Oftentimes, we go to comfort. So I just want to ask you, what is your comfort? Many people, chocolate, ice cream, some not so healthy, pornography, drinking. Or I'll show you God, I'll get a relationship. We become self-destructive, or we don't care about other people's feelings. It seems so easy to justify, because the pain in you, somehow there's a mind switch that happens, that you believe that the pain in you, the pain that you are feeling, gives you license then to hurt yourself or others without consequence. I just want to remind you, sort of a spiritual principle, that you are not responsible for the circumstances of your life or for the people that hurt you. Most of those, many of them will be out of your control, but you are responsible for your choices and what you do with that pain. And so first of all, I began gaining a lot of weight from all that ice cream. And so after a week or so, I decided it was time to stop this self-pity. Because with loneliness, when we think about loneliness, often there is a lot that overlays it. And self-pity is one of those things. I deserve better. God, you should be treating me better. I've been doing all of these things. We have our formula, and somehow God has not come through. He's not that contract that we think we've signed. I do this, and then God does this. It's not working for us. And self-pity, I call self-pity, it's the counterfeit Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit is the comforter. The self-pity comes along as the counterfeit comforter. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, you deserve better. God has really been holding out on you. If you you probably should just get it on your own. Go on the outside. You can get so much more on the outside without God's blessing. You'll see. It'll feel really, really good. Self-pity comes along and tries to comfort you by getting you to do things that are going to move you away from God. I just want to pause and let you think about the role of self-pity in your life. It's a powerful, powerful negative force. When do you throw in the towel? When do you say, you know what, I've had enough failed relationships because I could go on for another 2 or 3 or 4 that I thought were going to work out, didn't work out. A lot of pain, a lot of disappointment, a lot of tears. And when you've had something or you were expecting something to work out, that lonely feeling can be overwhelming. The statistics say that 20% of Americans have these feelings of loneliness. And it's become an increasing problem. In the 1980s or around 1990, 10% of people had problems with loneliness. Actually, the definition was there was no one with whom they could confide. They had nobody that they could talk to about important matters. 2006, it went from 10%, it's up to 25%. 25% of the people in this country say there's nobody that they can talk to about important matters. So loneliness, wherever it is or however it's manifest in your life, think about the people that you know and probably somebody in your life loneliness is affecting. I want to talk a little bit about loneliness research, what it looks like and how it's actually defined. So there are a couple of types of loneliness. One they would call situational loneliness, bereavement, divorce, a friend leaves, a breakup, loss of a job. There's something that there were people around that you were able to confide in, that you enjoyed, and they're no longer in your life. And then there's chronic loneliness, which means something has gone on for 2 years or more, which loneliness itself causes an increase in your cortisol, your stress hormones. So with an increase in cortisol, you'll often have difficulty sleeping. Increase in cortisol is also an increase in anxiety, so those are overlapping. Loneliness prior to the birth of a child can cause or be one of the factors involved in postpartum depression. So loneliness can affect postpartum depression. Let's talk a little bit about your family of origin, how that might affect your loneliness. What they find is that people who have parents who are not particularly nurturing, who are cold, distant, often violent, absence of emotional nurture, even some households where it's just very irrational. The kids can't figure out what they're doing or what they're doing wrong. That can set you up for loneliness. Lonely adolescents reported a higher incidence of what they called parental rejection. The parent actually using rejection as a form of punishment. That also has something to do, that kind of parenting style does also inform or cause narcissism, which we may talk about in another meeting. So loneliness was inversely related to the number of hours the father spent with the sons. In males, loneliness decreases the more time the father would spend with the son. So loneliness is not always that you don't have enough people around you. Sometimes it can be that your situation has changed. You had enough people for your current situation, but a new stressor has entered your life, like a breakup, like you didn't pass your test, like you've gotten a car accident. Something has happened to shift your emotional need. You need more people in your environment now, and those people are not available, or the ones who are available aren't able to help you with that. So if you're in a business or a situation where your coworkers are all competing with you, that can set up loneliness because you can't really confide in them. If you're in a family where you're competing for love, I know my family was that way. We're all sort of competing for Dad's attention. It can set up a stressful environment, and often people end up with loneliness. Interesting study was done. They took high school students and they gave them pagers, and when their pager went off, they were supposed to call, and they asked them a few questions. Were they alone, and were they lonely? How was their feeling of loneliness? And what they found was that if they called them during the week, they only had moderate loneliness. But if they called a student on the weekend, they had severe or intense loneliness if they were alone. So what we learn is that your expectations, perhaps of what your weekend is going to be like, powerfully informs, powerfully affects your feelings of loneliness. So let me ask you, what are your expectations? What are your expectations for your current relationship, for your current situation? And is it possible you can adjust those expectations? We know that widows have fairly severe loneliness. They say that one of the recent studies showed that 70% of widows listed loneliness as a problem, and almost 50% of them said it is the main problem that they have. So, as we look around in our social situation, we may feel lonely, but there probably are some people that may feel even lonelier. Well, how do we score loneliness? Well, it turns out there is something called the UCLA Loneliness Scale. So we can measure it and we can do research on it. And so if we're going to ask the question, was Jesus lonely? We're going to want to check the UCLA Loneliness Scale. So let me read you a couple of questions on this test. There's a 20-question test, and here are a couple of questions. And you can start thinking if you feel like Jesus would fit this description. So you score these questions as they relate to often, like this, I have this feeling often, sometimes, rarely, or never. So it's a scale. First question, I feel as if nobody really understands me. I feel as if nobody really understands me. Another question, my interests and ideas are not shared by those around me. Another question, my social relationships are superficial. Another question, nobody really knows me well. Another question, I feel shut out and excluded by others. Another one, people are around me but not with me. People are around me but not with me. Now I want to go now to a couple of examples as we start to put together Jesus' emotional IQ, his mental situation, his mental stability. What was life like for him? Let's go to the Last Supper. We're going to go to Luke chapter 22. So this is the first night of Passover. This is a holiday that he enjoyed. In fact, he says to them in Luke 22:15, I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. He really wants to eat the Passover, but he tells them that he's going to suffer. Then we go on to Luke 22, verse 20, and you'll notice some of the language in here. It's the Last Supper language. And likewise, he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, this cup is poured out for you. It is the new covenant in my blood. But behold, the hand of him who betrays me is with me at the table. For the Son of Man goes as it has been determined, but woe to the man by whom he is betrayed. Next verse, and they began to question one another, which of them it could be that was going to do this. This is in Luke. In the book of John, we have a little more detail that Peter asks John to lean against Jesus and find out who it is. So Jesus says, it's the one to whom I give this bread. And he gives it to Judas. So he tells John who it is. And then John goes on to write, and none of us knew who it was. None of us knew why Judas was leaving. So he says a statement, I'm going to be betrayed. He tells them who it is. And this is the next verse. I'll read it again. And they began to question one another, which of them it could be who was going to do this. Next verse. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was to be regarded as the greatest. This is amazingly insensitive. There's something that we call, it's called narcissistic conversation. And it's so much a part of our society that you might not even notice it. Somebody says, I am really hungry. And you say, oh, I just ate. Versus someone who says, I'm really hungry. Oh, when's the last time you ate? Right? One of them is narcissistic conversation and one of them is not. Basically, everything is about you. Oh, I'm not hungry. And what we're experiencing with Jesus here is narcissistic conversation. It would be essentially like your boss of a small company gets everyone together and says, one of you has submitted documents that's going to put me away for life, falsified documents. And everyone says, there's a curiosity. Well, who would that be? And after that kind of blows over for a few minutes, well, who's Employee of the Year this year? Who's getting that award? I put on the Christmas party. Well, my sales are so much better than anyone else's. You get this. Does anyone understand? Is anyone empathic? Does anyone understand what he's going through, what is being said? He said, I need to have this Passover before I suffer. He said, somebody's going to betray me. And nobody gets him. Nobody really understands. He's very, very alone. a little caveat of that, I think the fact that Jesus didn't say after Judas left, do you know where he's going? This is probably what I would have said. I'm going to tell you where he's going. He's going to go sell me down the river. That's where he's going. Now, why would I have done that? I would have done that because so much of my value comes from what people think of me. And someone who has spent 3 years with me, if they are going to betray me, I need value from all of you. And so I need to get that out there. You see, I need you to back me because someone is taking value from me. One of the beautiful things about Jesus is his value did not depend on what people thought of him. And that's one of the secrets to him countering loneliness, is he didn't take offense at the things that we usually take offense at. The fact that Judas would betray him was actually not about him. He was able to see, that's actually about Judas and where he is and what he needs to do. I'm not going to let that affect me. He didn't need to share it with everyone else. Seems like he tried to, but they weren't really interested, so he didn't press the point. He didn't need to. Another scene, Luke 22, is he goes to the Mount of Olives. He tells the disciples, can you just stay here and pray with me for a bit? Can you stay and pray? Watch and pray. I'm very distressed. He goes a little distance away, and he finds them sleeping. Are you sleeping and taking your rest? Couldn't you stay awake for an hour with me? I mean, you hear his heart here. This is a very distressing time. I think we're going to talk about this more. I'm going to do a session on anxiety. Was Jesus anxious? And that'll be something we'll discuss further. So the fact that it would say people are around me but not with me, one of the UCLA questions on the loneliness scale, to have them around him but not with him, he would have shown a mark of situational loneliness. One of the questions on that loneliness scale was, nobody really knows me. In Matthew 11, verse 27, we read, all things have been handed over to me by my Father, and nobody knows the Son except the Father. Nobody knows the Son except the Father. Wow. Spent 33 years. Nobody really took an interest in me. Nobody knows the Son except the Father. Interesting, he goes on and says, nobody knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Wow. I have to shift a little bit and ask the question, is the Father lonely? Ooh. Very provocative question. Is the Father lonely? Well, it depends on how you would define it. But I love asking those kinds of questions because the more we know him, and he's saying nobody knows him, what if we knew him a little better? What if we could experience, wow, are you lonely? I think of the parable Jesus tells of the prodigal son, where we have a son who basically says to his father, look, I'm not going to wait till you die for my inheritance. In so many words, I wish you were dead. Sell some property, give me my money. As if you were dead, I'm taking off. He takes off. Father does it, sells his property, gives him the money. Well, things don't work out so well for him. And there's an amazing verse. It says in Luke 15, verse 20, and he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. The father was watching, like looking out the window, waiting for his son. Is that an image of loneliness? Is that an image of longing, of someone who's missing this relationship? I think it is. I think it is. People who he loves, who he wants a relationship with, who he has had a relationship with, but for whatever reason, because of circumstances, don't trust his goodness. And they are out of here. They are going to buy their 6 gallons of ice cream or do whatever they do to, I'm going out on my own. You know, I wonder in that story, the father had another son. I wonder if that son had spent a little more time with his father, had actually told his father how much he appreciated his qualities. You see, I've looked at this and I've said, wow, if the father feels lonely, how might I minister to him? How might I bless him in that? Because you take that one prodigal story and you multiply it by millions. But I've been told all my life that the father is nothing but joyful, nothing but always happy, feels, nothing affects him. We don't affect him. That's not true. Now, you can have joy and you can have sorrow as well, but there's something about understanding the father's pain. Would it have helped the pain? Would it have relieved some of the pain if the other son had said, Dad, I'm with you, and I just want to tell you, you are a good father. You are a good father. You're faithful. I mean, the fact that you humbled yourself and gave that property, I mean, we don't know he's ever coming back. But I'm telling you something, you are good. I could just see the father sort of smiling. Yeah, still some pain for the lost son, but there's something about the son who's with you telling you who you are. This is who you are. I see it, Dad. I see it. You like to be told when people see your good qualities. And that is one of the antidotes to loneliness, to be able to tell each other, to notice the beauty around us and call it forth. Anyone can see dirt. Anyone can see the dirt. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time with me or really anyone to see, I don't think I'd have done it that way. There's a problem there. But it takes a specialist. It takes someone who's looking to find the gold in the dirt and call that out. You know what I see in you? I see some real beauty in you. I see your sensitive heart. I see how you serve. When in the book of Job, God is talking just glowingly about Job, this amazing man. And Satan is all there accusing, just trying to find his faults. And God is only looking for the good things in Job. Who are you more like? What is your speech more like about the people around you? Are you pulling out their faults and reviewing those to see? One of the problems, one of the precursors to loneliness is envy. And we are a society just full of envy. We stir it up, we love it. So-and-so got the job, or got the girl, or got the guy, or got the car that I wanted. Envy is a powerful, powerful negative tool. We can combat it by loving people, by actually saying, you know what, I'm going to love you. I choose to love you despite the fact that you may not be very humble, you got the reward, or you have what I want. I'm going to love you anyway. That's the antidote to envy. So, the question, was Jesus lonely? I would say Jesus had situational loneliness, which we know from the research is severely distressing, can be severely distressing depending on who you are and what your social supports are. When you are distressed, also prayer becomes difficult. We'll talk more about that in the section on anxiety. When we have these chemicals in our system, we become almost non-relational. that people are no longer actually people. They're just resources to use or obstacles in our way to get what we want. So talking with a person may be difficult, but talking with someone you can't see is almost impossible. But we hear a lot about, well, just pray about it. Sometimes we can't pray. Sometimes we're just shut down. It's just too difficult. But one of the things that Jesus did, and I think these are all antidotes to loneliness, one of the things is that he was quick to forgive. He had a lot of offenses coming against him. Constantly, almost consistently, he was offended. I mean, the Pharisees told him that he was healing by the power of Satan. I cannot think of a greater offense to tell the Son of God. I mean, to tell anyone. I mean, if someone said that to me, I would be pretty offended. But to tell God himself that this is evil, what you're doing. I mean, the level of offense is astounding. And he says things like, I honor my Father, but you dishonor me. I mean, that's his response. He called it, you're dishonoring me, I get it, but I'm honoring my Father. He wasn't taking all this stuff personally. You know, solitude is not loneliness. Solitude can actually be healing, a healing aspect, a healing discipline. The research does show that when you come out of your solitude, that often you are less lonely, that your relationships are more valued, they mean more to you, they're more vibrant. There's something about I'll say it's self-evaluation, talking with God, spending time alone, getting that identity directly from the Father versus where most of us try to get our identity, and that's on the internet, from Facebook, from these things. And I will just tell you, does Facebook help loneliness? What do the studies show? No. That there have been a couple of conflicting studies, but most of it shows that lonely people get on Facebook, and when they get on Facebook, they end up becoming more lonely. In fact, they become more angry. A lot of negative things happen because we just spoke about envy. What's Facebook full of? Envy. You're looking at other people who are showing you the highlights of their life, their pictures, and it stirs up something in most of us. My life is not like that. You know what? God's not being good to me. You know, life is not good to me. There's something that happens with this pattern of thought, even why we're on Facebook, why we're looking for people to help us with our loneliness. So most studies show that if you get on Facebook when you're lonely, you become more lonely. It's not necessarily healing for that. I'll say rest. Rest can be very healing for loneliness because much of our loneliness has to do with our constant stimulation. We love stimulation. We love those phones. We love our electronics. And when we're constantly stimulated, our threshold for what gives us joy is actually quite high. We need a video. We need a YouTube. We need something a real great buzz to get us to laugh a bit. And when you have taken a rest, when you've taken a Sabbath, you know, I shut my phone off Friday night to Saturday night because I don't necessarily consider Sunday church a Sabbath. It's, you know, a lot of it's social for me. If I need to rest, it's hard for me to do that on Sunday. Everyone's a little bit different, but if you can find a day of the week where you can shut your electronics off, it's essentially a fast. And I'll tell you, it's hard every week. I mean, I sort of twitch when I go by my phone, which only shows you the level of addiction. And if you don't think you're addicted, then shut it off and see what happens. Everyone's got these addictions. It's not just the people who are on the street. We've all got them, and they're well hidden, but they're not yielding good fruit for us. And the only way to help with them is to fast from them. We can fast from food, we can fast from media. Whatever is not serving you well, just consider doing a little fast. Journaling, listening prayer, the things that I do on the Sabbath. One of the things I do on the Sabbath is I try to take a verse or something that means something to me, and I'll try to write a little song or a poem or something, and I'll sing that back to God. How is your worship? Jesus seemed to be very good at worship. One of the things that he did at this Passover meal, it said that they sang a hymn.
Excuse me, Dr. Levy, I didn't want to interrupt you, but it looked like that recording turned off.
Oh, that's fine. It probably ran out of, that's fine. Jesus sang a hymn at this meal, the Last Supper. So if you look at how he's dealing with the last night of his life, and a big part of that was singing. How is your worship? Are you able to sing any songs just on your own? Or is it only on Sundays that you're able to sing? One of the things that also is a heart check, I'll call it, just honesty. Because many of us feel lonely, but is it really loneliness? I can tell you for myself that, and I'll generalize this, if only someone who is very attractive is going to fix your loneliness problem, I'm not sure it's loneliness. If only a certain type of person is going to fix your loneliness, I'm not so sure that's loneliness. That might be a heart check. What do I really want? What is it that I need? I'm so hung up on these features that I'm looking for that somebody needs to present to me so that I can have another friend or have a date or whatever. Is it really loneliness? I think one of the things that Jesus also did is he grieved his losses. He grieved his losses. Most of us do not grieve our losses. Most of us try to distract our losses. We try to move right on. We try to get, right on the internet. We try to get some video going. We try to get busy again. If you don't grieve them, it's going to stick. They're going to lodge in your heart. I'm just going to give you just a pause for a moment. If there is a loss that you need to grieve, that you've never actually gone to the Lord and say, do you understand what it feels like to be abandoned, to be rejected, to be put down, to put up with what I had to go through, to have them steal that money from me, whatever your loss was? You go to Jesus with that, and Jesus will say, oh yeah, I get it. I know exactly what that feels like. People who you were with for years, you were hoping that you could trust them, but they sold you down the river for money. The rest of them ran away. People who abandoned you, people who wanted you to fail. Yeah, I know what that feels like. I can help you with that. You want some help with that? He would love to help you with that. And this is this relational aspect we want to step into. Jesus had this relational aspect with his Father, and he did what he could to maximize that. And it certainly helped with his relationships with others. The last thing I'll say how Jesus handled loneliness is that he created belonging. Many of us will say, I don't fit in. That is such a common terminology today. I don't fit in. They don't receive me. They don't accept me. That we expect that the group is going to sort of set up a little niche for us, that we're going to fit into this group. And it never really happens. And sometimes it does happen, but it's pretty rare. Jesus had nobody setting up a little niche for him. But he created belonging wherever he went. Oh, you want to be part of my group? You can be part of my group. This is who I am. You want to be with me? You're good enough to be with me. Absolutely. Created belonging. Are you creating belonging around you? Or are you looking for others to let you into their clique or their group? I just want to pause right there. How can you create more belonging around you? I want to go on to say that every negative emotion is temporary. If we are in Christ, every negative emotion is temporary. That this too will pass. One way or another, it will pass. But so many of us live with this irritation or anger with God. It's almost like we're just wagging our finger at him. I can't believe you allowed such and such. My parents, my family, my ex. I can't believe this happened. And I can tell you that when I went through those breakups, I knew one thing. I knew that when I get to heaven, that God is not going to apologize to me for being unable to find a wife for me. That he's not going to say, I'm so sorry, I just couldn't find anybody for you. Tried, just couldn't. But he's going to say something like, I didn't send you the wife you wanted, but did you get any of the other blessings that I sent your way? Any of the other ones? No, I was just looking for the wife. That's all I wanted. So many of us, so narrow, and some of it has to do with our media intake. We're just chewing on, we're feeding our minds and our brains with what relationship's supposed to be like, we're all waiting for this perfect one, or perfect marriage, or whatever it is for you. I think it's going to be hard if on that day when we meet Jesus face to face, you don't want to have your finger wagging. Because it's all going to become crystal clear and you're going to feel really embarrassed about that. Like, ooh, what if, and this is the strategy I used, what if I just started praising him? What if I just started praising him, singing songs to him, and I didn't feel like it? And this is where it comes. We don't feel like it. We don't feel like praising, so we somehow think it's, we shouldn't do it unless we feel like it. There's something about praise that actually does lift your mood. And I believe that God would just, calls the angels over and he says, would you believe this? We don't see this very often. Come look at this. We got this guy down there. Another woman just rejected him, but you know what? He's praising me. And he's expectant and something good is going to happen in his future. We don't see this. Hey, come look at this. Yeah, can you do that? Can you make his day? Can you change the way you think about it? Because it's all going to work together for good. We're promised that. And when it does, you don't want your finger wagging. You want to say, I knew it was. There it is. I didn't know how, but sure enough, it was going to work together for good. Get your psychology tuned in to God. I feel like there's a little image I have when a little boy gets left at Home Depot or something, and he lost his parents, and they take him to the front counter, and he's all upset. If you're the parent, which would give you more pleasure? Obviously, if you get there and your child is distressed and crying, you would probably expect that. Distressed, feeling like you've left. But what if you got there and the kid actually came up with a song? Mommy's coming to get me. I know she'll never forget me. Or something. Came up with a little song and then kind of got scared and would sing it again. And doing something to remind himself of your character. Doing something to get off the fear and start focusing on your character. I think that would so honor you when you showed up there at Home Depot and your child had created a song just to remind themselves of how good you are. And sure enough, there you showed up. You showed up. And there's one thing I want to do. The last thing I want to do here is something called disappointment with God. And I want to lead you through a prayer Many of us have these disappointments. Something in your life, this big disappointment that is registered, and it actually is an obstacle for you feeling close to God. Maybe you used to, but those days were gone. This thing has happened, and since it's happened, you have just never felt quite as close to God. There's a good reason for that. If I was supposed to speak at 7, and I showed up about now, and just got up here and started speaking, you'd be looking at me really strange. You'd be like waiting for something. You'd be waiting for an apology. You were inconvenienced. You're just, all you want to hear is, look, the traffic was bad, I couldn't, whatever it was, I'll have to say something. And then now you're able to, okay, the relationship is okay, you can start now. But if I just got up here and started speaking like nothing happened, there would be a problem in our social contract. So we pray about things and we want God to do things, and we either don't get the prayers answered, something happens, and we get no apology. In fact, we get silence often. And so it would be expected psychologically that there would be a problem in the relationship. There's a problem now, since that's happened, that we've not been as close. I've noticed there's just some distance now. I can't really trust the way I did. But the difference is, if I had been doing this, and I had been on time every week, and based on my character, you knew that something must have happened, and that either I will call or I will come, or something will happen, I'm going to make it right. Based on my character, I could just come up and start speaking. And you could, in a better way, deal with that. And I just want to say, if there's something in your life right now, I just want to take a moment of silence that you need to go to God with and just get some validation. God, this really hurt me. I expected this. Get your expectations out there. I was hurt. Do you know what this feels like? Because many of us, before we can be comforted, we need validation. We need to be validated. Oh yeah, I get that. Yeah, that hurt. Yeah. Oh yeah, when your parents did that, when they left you, they didn't do what you needed. Those 1,000 tiny neglects through your childhood, yeah, I understand how that would have injured you. And then allow him to comfort you. And what we want to say is, I don't want this offense, I don't want this tragic event in my life to stand as an obstacle between you and I any longer. Tonight I want to get rid of it, because one day it will become very clear. You don't have to explain it to me. See, we're waiting for the explanation. And one of the things we want to say to God is, you don't have to explain it to me now. It will become clear. Based on your character, I know this is going to become clear in the future. And I'm going to push into that now, which is going to grow my faith at a level it hasn't grown before. And it's going to grow our relationship to a new level. That you can be trusted even if I don't understand what's happening in the present. You don't have to continually explain it to me. You're not responsible to me to always give me a good explanation for why I'm suffering. I'm going to trust you to be God. And this is going to be a new level of faith for many of us, because we are such a society that wants an explanation. If we don't get one, then the relationship is off. I'm going to give you a few moments just to talk to God, and then I'm going to lead you through a prayer to sort of patch things up, or to sort of tune things up with God. Okay. Well, some of this will need to continue at home, but I just want to go through this. Just responsive prayer. This is a prayer that I use, and I've used in the past, just to release. Essentially, I'm releasing my disappointment with God. I want to sort of clean the closet. So just say this after me. I come to you, God, with painful events I don't understand. Things that have happened to me and to my loved ones that hurt. I choose to set aside what I don't understand. And I believe that you are good. This is not based on blind faith or on my feelings, but based on your character. The measuring stick of your love for me is the cross of Christ, and not my circumstances. There is no greater expression of love than Jesus dying in my place, so that I could be in relationship with my Creator. As I look back on my life, I can see that you've been with me and have helped me in the past, although I may not have recognized it. Although I do not understand these painful events, you are good, kind, and loving, and have my best interests in mind. Forgive me for believing the voice of your enemy, telling me to doubt your love for me, and that I am alone, or I need to fear my future. I choose to believe that you will never leave me or forsake me, and that I am precious to you, and you have planned a good future for me. I choose to use my faith right now as I continue to declare your goodness and love. I believe my emotions will follow. Please, God, help my unbelief. God, I will pursue you. I choose to trust you with my loved ones, that you have their best interest in mind. Even if it looks painful, and I want to see them free from suffering. You are enough for them. And you love them more than I do. Although I cannot see how this will work out, I want this relationship with you. Forgive me for judging you for what I do not understand. I refuse to be offended by you. I yield my life, health, finances, relationships, ministry, business, family, and my dreams to you. I am free to ask you for what I desire, and free to praise you whatever the outcome. I will continue to pursue you. I'm no longer waiting for proof that you love me. That was settled on the cross as Jesus died for our sins, allowing us forgiveness and relationship with you forever. I'm coming after you. Reveal yourself to me.